The morning air felt crisp and alive as I jogged along the quiet city park, my worn-out sneakers thudding rhythmically against the pavement. Sweat trickled down my neck, and my heart pounded, not just from running, but from the weight of the week. My bills were piling up. My mother's medical report still lay unpaid. And despite working 12-hour shifts at Dandrix Corporation as a mere assistant, I was no closer to stability than I had been a year ago. The city around me was waking up, sunlight spilling gently across the skyline, cars humming in the distance, and for a brief moment, I pretended I was free. Free from pressure. Free from fear. But that illusion shattered the moment a black luxury car pulled up beside me. The tinted window rolled down, and a familiar voice, deep, commanding, and unsettlingly calm, called out my name. Aiden? It was him. Vincent Hale. The CEO of Dandrix. My boss's boss. The man everyone at the office whispered about but no one dared to approach. A corporate legend, rumored to have built his empire from nothing, now known for his perfectionism and ruthless expectations. He looked at me with curious amusement as I slowed to a stop, panting, confused why the most powerful man in the company had suddenly decided to interrupt my morning run. His suit was sharp, his dark hair neatly styled, and his gaze intense enough to make my pulse quicken for all the wrong reasons. "You jog every morning, don't you?" he asked, stepping out of the car as if time itself waited for him. "Yes, sir," I stammered, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Good," he said, his tone shifting into something firm, almost challenging. "Starting tomorrow, you'll be my personal trainer. You'll meet me at 6 a.m. here, every day. I'll pay you more. I'll promote you. But if you refuse," he paused, eyes locking onto mine, "you're fired. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us how fate can twist in unexpected ways, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heart of a Father. It helps more than you know." I stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching his car drive away, my thoughts spiraling between disbelief and panic. Be his trainer? I wasn't even certified. Sure, I jogged daily to manage stress, but I wasn't some fitness expert. Still, I couldn't afford to lose my job, not with my mother's medication depending on my paycheck. So the next morning, I showed up. The sun had barely risen, painting the park in soft daylight as birds chirped overhead. Vincent Hale was already there, wearing a sleek tracksuit, stretching with precision. He looked like a man who didn't understand the word relax. For the first week, I guided him through basic runs, stretches, and breathing techniques. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words cut sharp and clean. "You push others harder than yourself," he said once, after I slowed down to match his pace. "Maybe that's why you're still stuck." It stung, because it was true. I had learned to settle. To survive. To keep my head down at work, saying yes, sir, to every unreasonable request. But Vincent seemed to see right through me. Each morning, I watched his composure crack slightly, his perfect form giving way to sweat and fatigue. And strangely, I began to see another side of him. Not the ruthless CEO everyone feared, but a man who carried his own exhaustion like armor. Sometimes, in between laps, he'd fall silent and stare at the city horizon as if haunted by something. One morning, after a particularly long run, I dared to ask, "Why me, sir? You could hire any professional trainer." He looked at me for a moment before replying quietly, "Because you don't look at me like everyone else does. You look like someone still fighting." Days turned into weeks. I continued working my regular office job during the day, barely sleeping between shifts, but something in me began to change. Vincent's brutal discipline rubbed off on me. I started to stand straighter, speak more confidently in meetings, even offer suggestions I once would have swallowed. My coworkers noticed. "Aiden, what's gotten into you?" my colleague Mara asked one afternoon, smiling. "You're not the quiet guy anymore." I laughed it off, but deep inside, I knew it wasn't just confidence, it was growth. Vincent was unknowingly training me, too. Then came the day everything shattered. Vincent's father, co-founder of the company, passed away suddenly. The office atmosphere shifted overnight. Vincent stopped showing up for morning runs. Emails went unanswered. Whispers filled the halls, he was broken, some said. Others claimed he'd resign. I tried reaching out, but he ignored every message. Days turned into silence. Finally, after 2 weeks, I went to his private office. The blinds were drawn. He sat behind his desk, his face pale and weary, surrounded by half-finished documents. For a moment, he didn't even notice me. "Sir?" I said softly. He looked up, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "Aiden, what are you doing here?" "You taught me not to quit," I said, stepping closer. "You said people like us keep fighting. So, I'm here to make sure you don't stop running." He stared at me for a long time, then slowly stood up. His lips twitched into the faintest smile. "You're impossible," he muttered. But the next morning, he was back at the park. That morning was different. The sunlight was bright, the air clearer than ever. He pushed harder than usual, long sprints, uphill climbs, relentless pace. By the end, we were both gasping, drenched in sweat, laughing like old friends instead of CEO and assistant. That was the first time I saw him human. Not powerful. Not intimidating. Just human. Over the following months, our morning sessions became something sacred. We talked, not just about work, but about life. He told me how his father never believed he'd make it, how every victory he achieved came with a price. I told him about my mother, about the fear of losing her, about the pressure of pretending to be fine. For once, neither of us wore masks. The bond we formed wasn't friendship exactly, it was respect, built on exhaustion, pain, and progress. And then one day, everything changed again. Vincent called me into his office late afternoon. The golden daylight filtered through the tall windows, glinting off the framed awards on his wall. He didn't look up when I entered, just motioned for me to sit. "Aiden," he began quietly, "I've been offered a major merger deal. It means expansion, travel, new management structure, and I'll need someone I can trust." My heart pounded. "Sir, are you saying?" "You're promoted," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "Head of Wellness Operations. It's yours, if you want it." I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, words caught somewhere between gratitude and disbelief. "But why me?" I finally whispered. "Because you made me remember why I started," he said simply. That night, I went home and told my mother. She cried. I cried. We both sat in silence afterward, watching the sunset through our apartment window. Life still wasn't easy, but for the first time, it felt possible. Months passed, and Vincent's transformation was visible to everyone. He smiled more, worked with more patience, and even introduced wellness programs across departments. He claimed it boosted morale, but I knew it was more personal than that. It was his way of giving back. Every morning, we still ran, just two people chasing peace through motion. Sometimes we didn't even speak. We didn't need to. But the moment that stayed with me forever came one bright morning when he stopped mid-run, hands on his knees, catching his breath. "You know," he said between laughs, "I fired so many people in my life for saying no. But I think if you'd said no that day, I would have lost something more than an employee." He straightened, eyes soft. "I would have lost hope." I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded and smiled, feeling tears sting my eyes. That's when I realized, sometimes life's most unfair moments lead you to people who change you, not through kindness or comfort, but through challenge. Vincent didn't just give me a promotion. He gave me purpose. And I gave him something he'd forgotten, connection. So whenever someone asks how I became